He was born in the summer of his 27th year, coming home to a place he'd never been before. He left yesterday behind him. You might say he was born again. You might say he found the key for every door. When he first came to the mountains, his life was far away, on the road, hanging by a song. But the string's already broken, and he doesn't really care. It keeps changing fast, and it don't last for long. If the Colorado Rocky Mountain High, I've seen it rain and fire in the sky. The shadow from the starlight is softer than a lullaby. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado.
It was the middle of the night, literally, the 11th hour, maybe even later for Michigan State fans, right after the Spartan basketball team had somehow held on after nearly blowing a 20-point lead at Illinois to win that game, and we'll get to that game in just a little bit. When MSU fans found out through various sources online that Mel Tucker, the head coach then at the University of Colorado in Boulder, not far from where I am right now, had decided to take the Spartan football job, doing a 180 from the following statement. This was issued on February 8th, 5 days before our podcast recording right now. And Coach Tucker, this is his verified account, said, quote, "While I am flattered to be considered for the head coaching job of MSU football, I am committed to CU Buffs football for hashtag the build of our program. It's great athletes, coaches, and supporters. Hashtag unfinished business. Hashtag go Buffs. We are hashtag relentless. Hashtag culture. Hashtag the build." Now, these words, as they were transmitted out into the universe via this great medium that Tom Izzo loves called Twitter, rang true at the time for everybody that I'm surrounded by out here in Buffsland, Colorado fans, alums, people that I work with here at iHeart in Denver, that he was reassuring everyone he was staying put where he was, where he had been for 1 year as head coach here at Colorado, where he took the team to a 5-7 record. They had a great start, kind of faltered through the Pac-12 portion of the schedule, but hope sprang eternal here. Really, for the first time since Gary Barnett, the former Northwestern coach, who then later coached at Colorado, left in 2005. So we're talking 15 years ago. And Colorado has not been relevant. They've had one season since then, one, where they've been above 500. It has been barren times here for football, for a once proud program as you go back to McCartney in the early 90s. You know, in the big Rashaan Salam era, and Cordell Stewart going to Michael Westbrook against Michigan, and Tom Crawford remembers that one back in 1994. But that's a long time ago. That's ancient history. And Mel Tucker was finally inspiring people to come back to their games and attend them in Boulder, to donate money, to buy season tickets. And in fact, on the night in question that we lead off our podcast with, Mel Tucker was attending a fundraiser on behalf of CU football with some pretty high rollers, at which he was telling them, you know, about how much he was committed to the process and everything you just heard in the tweet, the build, relentless, unfinished business, and they donated money. And the athletic director was there for Colorado. Well, it was within hours of that, if not shorter timetable, Bill Beekman had made his way to Colorado with an offer. And this offer would double Mel Tucker's salary, give him basically unfettered access to funds for his assistant coaching staff as well. And he decided to take the job at Michigan State and become the Spartans' 25th all-time head coach for football. Now, this from Brad Galley, Channel 7, WXYZ in Detroit. And in light of the tweet that I just read you, These were Mel Tucker's comments at his introductory press conference on Wednesday evening.
You know, I hoped. My dream was to come back here and be the head coach. That was my dream. You know, when you work for a guy like Nick Saban and you see him do it, you know, you can't help but to aspire to be able to be in that position one day and do that. So this is certainly a dream come true for me to be back here. The time has gone very fast. It seems like just yesterday that I was here, $400 a month as a GA, sleeping under my desk. I tried to always make sure that when Nick Saban walked past the GA office, I was there, you know, coming and going. You could hear him. He was shaking that change in his pocket coming down the hall. You knew Coach Saban was coming down the deal, and I was right there at attention. So, yeah, it's special.
New head coach, Michigan State football, Mel Tucker, is who you heard right there. Now, let's get to his pedigree for a moment, because unquestionably it makes him a very good fit. It makes sense from Michigan State's perspective that they would want somebody like Mel Tucker. As he mentioned there, he started off his football coaching career as a graduate assistant under Nick Saban. He was back with Michigan State at that same time, late 90s, right around 2000. Then Mark D'Antonio was also there. Both of them transitioned at one point to Ohio State's coaching staff under Jim Tressel in the early 2000s. And, of course, that remarkable run that culminated in a national championship for the Buckeyes. And Mark D'Antonio was the defensive coordinator for that Ohio State football team. He would later go on to his own head coaching job at Cincinnati that we're all familiar with, and Mel Tucker would be elevated to a defensive coordinator kind of co-equal role at Ohio State. He would later get NFL experience. In fact, at one point, he was the interim head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He had that level head coaching experience in the NFL. Ultimately, through his various stops, he would end up back with Nick Saban at Alabama, and he invoked Nick Saban in his press conference, as you heard right there. And here's what Coach Saban had to say about the hire of Mel Tucker at Michigan State. He said, quote, "I've known Mel Tucker since my days coaching at Michigan State when he was a graduate assistant on our staff. Since then, Mel has made a name for himself as one of the best and brightest coaches in our profession. I believe he will do a tremendous job as the head coach of the Spartans. MSU is getting a guy with infinite class and great personality who is smart, works hard, and does it with an incredible amount of enthusiasm and positive energy. Mel is a tireless recruiter who knows the game of college football and understands what it will take to be successful in East Lansing." That is head coach Nick Saban at Alabama. Also, head coach Tom Izzo had comments. He was there at the introductory press conference. And as always, he has a special affinity in his heart, Coach Izzo, for football. There was talk at one time, I remember talking to, I believe it was Hondo Carpenter from Spartan Nation, that said, Coach Izzo seriously thought about, like this was not, I'm not joking, being the head football coach at Michigan State, that it meant that much to him, that he was that passionate about it. And here's what he had to say at the Mel Tucker introductory press conference on Wednesday night.
I'm here and I'm only speaking because basketball is my second sport. I love football my whole life. I know that is funny, but it's the truth. When I come back, if I believe in reincarnation, I will be Vince Lombardi someday. So if he wants to play for me after you're done, I'm fine with it. But I just want to say you are lucky, because I think you're in a place that, like some of us, had many opportunities to leave and never wanted to leave. And I hope you feel the same way. And these coaches here, it's a special place because with the jealousies that go on in a lot of schools, a lot of football and basketball coaches don't get along, a lot of women's volleyball and basketball don't get along. It's been an unbelievable 37 years and 25 of them as the head coach, and you're the 25th head coach. It seems like it's all right. What makes me happier is that you have Big Ten background. I've always said I think it's important when you work for some of the great guys. I'm a big Barry Alvarez fan. Nick Saban and I started together as assistants and then as head coaches. Mark D'Antonio's been one of my better friends, and I look at all the people that you work for, and ever since I came here, it was George Perlis who kind of brought me in and took me under his belt, because he was the old guy and I was the GA. I'm a little bit ticked off that I'm the old guy and you're not the GA, but you're the younger version. Okay, so I'm a little bummed out about that, but so be it. I'm going to be here for you, your wife, your family, and whatever you need, because it does take a group of people to be a champion. And I'm also, JoJo, very excited because you being both a Illinois grad and a Rutgers law student grad, we're 3-0 against those two schools. And,
Head coach Tom Izzo there, entertaining the crowd, a lighter atmosphere with Mel Tucker being introduced, and you could hear, again, the passion in his voice, the fact that Tom Izzo came in as a graduate assistant himself under Judd Heathcote. Now, he mentioned George Perlis there. I find that to be interesting, and certainly he looked up to George Perlis in a similar way that he looked up to Judd Heathcote. Mel Tucker, for his part, afterward, with a gaggle of reporters around him, again, this from Brad Galley, WXYZ, Channel 7 in Detroit, about taking over the Michigan State position and where his thoughts were on that.
When Mark D'Antonio decided to retire, how quickly did you think this could be a reality? I could be Michigan State's next head coach.
No, that wasn't part of my thinking at that time. And we were very, very busy. It was right before the signing date, and so I was laser focused on completing our class in Boulder, and just really, I believe in being where your feet are, and playing through the whistle, and so we were right in the middle of it at that point.
Well, there's a lot to break down and unpack from those comments that Mel Tucker just made. And there was, in fact, a very fascinating news package from Channel 9 here in Denver about Mel Tucker. It was kind of a day in the life type thing. And I want to make sure that you hear this. Now, there's some video that goes along with it that is going to be lost in this format of a podcast that you're not going to be able to see. But I think the natural sound and, just exactly what he does going through that day in the life that I talk about is worth going back and revisiting. And we want to make sure that you hear this because I think it really paints the picture of who he is as a coach. So we're going to go ahead and do this. And bear with me, listen along. This is from News 9 in Denver.
It's 6:08. So yesterday I did it in 12 minutes. I want to have a physical practice today, though. I want to have good energy, and I want it to be physical. I want to hear some pass pop today. This is my favorite parking spot. There's no one usually here. So let's see how I did here. Time to get this party started. See if we can get these guys to hit somebody today. All right, here we go.
I'm fairly enthusiastic.
Coach Johnson.
I want to have a sustainable pace in how I go about my business. I try to be consistent because I don't want to be up and down. I want everyone to know what to expect from me every day. I don't like having staff meetings.
Morning. You guys be on your best behavior today.
I got 40 people all in one room at one time. Let's get in and get out and let's everybody get back to work.
I'll figure it out. I'm a high rep guy, man. We'll figure it out.
Pre-practice staff meetings average about 2.5 minutes. That's all I got. Appreciate it. You got to trust people to do their jobs. As long as they know what their jobs are,
well, I'll get with them.
Which they do, they'll do it.
Go. All right, it's time to get started. It hurts me more to go down than to go up, though. It's my knees.
And I better be ready to bring energy to the meeting room. And the players know that, and if I don't do that, something's wrong.
Morning, man. Morning. Y'all good? Everybody all happy? See how y'all feeling about an hour? See how many people smiling? Hey, listen, we got to have a more physical practice today.
We got a 3-1 pass rush. Got a big hole for the quarterback to step up. We don't have guys chasing the ball. There's no upper body violence. Guys that stand there. Guys, we cannot practice like that. You can't do it. You can't do it. And we're not going to let you do it. When you run to the ball, you got to run with a purpose. It's not the fact that you see the ball down and you just kind of chase it. No, you got to run. I want to see upper body. I want to see your arms pumping and getting there with a purpose. You don't want to just take that and absorb that. If a guy's going to lower his shoulder, you just strike his ass and knock him back. You got to see what you hit, bull your neck, and strike the guy, hit the guy to the shoulder. What's the first thing I said this morning? We got to have a what? A more physical practice. Strike him and lock the guy out. Strike him and lock the guy out. Let's go. The best part of my day, the meetings with the players and then on the field coaching. Physical ass practice today. Greetings. Stephen, this is Mel Tucker. It's calling. It's Wednesday morning. It's about 8:09. I expect you to be up and already moving by now. All right, let's see if we can get these guys to hit somebody today. What's wrong with you? Somebody stole your dog? No. You want me to get you a cup of Joe? No. You want me to bring it to you? We need a DJ booth over there is what we need. Good tempo. Cut. Right there. Efficient. Let's go figure it out! Figure it out! The clock is already ticking. No wasted motion. I'm talking, I want to hear you strike.
Yes, sir.
I want to hear that.
Yes, sir.
I want to post right here or run through his face. One of the two. Upper body violence is what I want to see. Strike right there. There you go. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Hey, you better pick it up. You better be ready. Effort, running to the ball, running and hitting, being physical. That's what this program was all about. There's nothing out there but green grass and opportunity. Look at that. That's beautiful. Then I really like watching the film. I like to see if what we're coaching, they're actually doing it. You know, you can start on a play and early and down be in a defeated position, but if you strain to finish, you know, you can catch up, you can recover. So that's the best part of my day, is getting a chance to coach and work with the players and work with the other coaches.
And once again, that was Mel Tucker. You heard a day in the life mic'd up from News 9 here in Denver, covering Coach Tucker during his time as the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes. And he is now the 25th head coach for Michigan State football. One more piece of sound I want to share with you before we bring in Tom Crawford, and that is, this is from Dog Nation Daily, hosted by Brandon Adams. It was brought to my attention by a Great Lakes Divide listener, and it features a former colleague of mine from my days covering Michigan State. He's a Michigan State graduate himself. He once had a radio program in Lansing, Griffin Grins, and then he was the original host of the Spartan Beat before Rico Beard, and that is Mike Griffith. And he had some rather ominous things to say about the state of the Michigan State program, what Mel Tucker knew and when he knew it, if he knew it at all, based on what might be coming down the pike. I found these comments fascinating. We're going to try to have Mike on this podcast coming up this weekend, but give a close listen to what Mike Griffith had to say.
I've been watching this closely. I still talk with people. You know, I went to Michigan State. I covered that beat, and I still talk with people that are involved on both sides of the lawsuit. And what Mel Tucker doesn't know, and I don't think Michigan State's been forthcoming about, is Michigan State is going to be under NCAA investigation. That's going to happen. It will absolutely happen. And the lawsuit that is pending against Mark D'Antonio and Michigan State for wrongful termination will likely evolve into a racial lawsuit. Mel Tucker has stepped into it pretty big. And all I can say is I hope that the paycheck is worth it for him. His track record indicates he doesn't stay anywhere very long. And I would suggest to you that he will not be at Michigan State beyond 2 or 3 years. This is a panic move by Michigan State University. Mel is a minority, and they wanted to make a minority hire. That was very important to their board of trustees. Mel does have the Nick Saban pedigree. He has worked with Mark D'Antonio before, so he does have familiarity. But I think he is a good coach. But I think it is a bad hire for Michigan State, and I think it is a bad job for Mel Tucker. I think Mel Tucker would have been better off at Colorado. I think it would be easier to win at Colorado than Michigan State. At Michigan State, you start out every day number 4 in your division. Michigan State in the Big Ten East Division is the equivalent of Kentucky football in the SEC East. Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State will always have more resources than Michigan State. Always in football. That will never change. That won't change in my lifetime. That won't change in my son's lifetime. That won't change in my granddaughter's lifetime. If you're 4th place in the East at Michigan State, that's where you belong in football. And they are Kentucky in football. And what Mark D'Antonio did was pretty amazing. They won with defense. They had a great recruiting class that posted 3 straight top 10 finishes. I covered that era. It was the greatest era of modern era history of Michigan State football. It happens once every 50 years. Mel Tucker won't win there, BA. It's a curious, forced hire, and good for Mel that he's getting paid, and good for Jimmy Sexton that he got him the job. But this is not going to end well, and I'm going to stay tuned. I mean, there's a part of me that thinks Mel Tucker could reverse his decision. Mel lost a lot of credibility with this. He went on Denver radio stations yesterday and told everyone he was staying at Colorado. He lost a lot of professional credibility with this. So this is going to be one. This is a train wreck, and it's one that you're not going to want to see, but it's one that ESPN's going to move in on. It's going to turn into a national story. And, it's not going to be good.
Some stinging words from Mike Griffith, former host of the Spartan Beat in Lansing, now, of course, covering the Georgia Bulldogs and the SEC. You heard him there on Dog Nation Daily with Brandon Adams, the host, and wow, I mean, just everything he had. There were some haymakers in there. And speaking of haymakers, our own Tom Crawford, before we bring him in live, he had his own video response in a Tom's Take, and I wanted to make sure to play that for you. A lot of people responding to this on Twitter.
This is crazy, the wacky world of college football. And then Drew Pearson, the former Dallas Cowboy and former Tulsa teammate of my good friend Mark Ditzworth, he tweets out this morning, Mel Tucker is a con man. He recruited my grandson to go to CU, said he wasn't going anywhere, then ups and leaves. Sat there and lied to my face. He wasn't going anywhere. So I want to beat him up today on social media. What else can you do? Forewarning to Michigan State. What goes around comes around. What he does to Colorado, he might just do to you.
And that's Tom Crawford. You heard him right there. And just some of the responses were cracking me up. And we're going to give Tom, of course, a chance to respond here. My friend Steve Florian says to Tom, "You're pathetic. It's cute. U of M fans are scared." What else here? Got Chris Davis, another big-time listener of The Drive with Jack during our time together, Tom and me, with that Spotlight program. My own The Schuling Report said, "This could happen to any team by any coach. Hell, it happens in real life all the time." Colin, Spartan Dog 23 says, "Are you going to cry, you bum?" Another one, this from Mrs. Belvedere. Great TV show in the 80s, by the way, Mr. Belvedere. On this week's episode of Why Do You Care? Joseph Patrick says, "Tom, you have really been a lot more confident since your basketball team got its first win against us in over a year." Mike Faddis says, "You are obsessed." Sherry, this might have been the best one, says, quote, "There are drugs to treat obsessions. Please look into their use." And what's another one? Spartan Hype says, "This guy is not contextually intelligent." Turd Ferguson says, "You sound like you're coming from a neutral spot with absolutely no agenda." And there's another guy, Sue Oros. Wow, she's usually pretty mild-mannered. "Who gives a shit what you think?" That's for Tom. And and this, I just these are just cracking me up. There was one other one this guy named Todd, I believe it was. He was just going nuts on Tom with this one. I think that's enough, though. Tom, we'll bring you in. And, this tweet garnered a pretty hefty ratio of Michigan State fans clapping back at you. But I don't know if there's anything in the post that was inaccurate that you said. You quoted an actual tweet that Pearson made, the actual actions of Mel Tucker. And I want to start, I guess, with just your response to that and people kind of getting back at you on this video.
And they accuse Michigan fans of being overly sensitive, huh? I mean, this is amazing. I mean, all I do is attribute something else. I mean, and it doesn't, and those quotes that you're reading me are pretty much, other than Joe Patrick, the former Michigan State lineman who's a friend of mine, I think that's the only one I took a look at because I saw the name. I don't look at that stuff. It just goes to the territory. And listen, and I admire Michigan State fans because I feel the same way for Michigan. You do get sensitive about it because you're emotionally tied to your school, and that's the beauty of intercollegiate athletics. So I don't take it personal at all. But can you imagine the response if they had heard what that audio clip that you just played of Mike Griffith, how they would have responded to that? And Mike and I used to banter back on the Michigan State stuff all the time. He would always needle me on Harbaugh and Michigan and all that stuff. So I would cringe. That is cringeworthy to see the responses that they would have to Mike Griffith's audio clip you just played.
Well, on the plus side for Michigan State, where they were just under a week ago when Luke Fickell kind of turned them away at the altar, so to speak, Bill Beekman came back. I had the Lonely Incredible Hulk theme song for him departing the plane from Seth Wells' video on Channel 10, arriving back at the Lansing airport. I got to admit, though, this has given me whiplash, this whole story regarding Mel Tucker, again, being in the belly of the beast here in Boulder, Colorado, and Denver, where I currently live, reside, and work. And to have him just do this 180, yeah, there is reason for caution with that. Now, granted, his salary was doubled. I don't know anybody in my life who would turn something like that down. The money that's been allocated for his staff is going to set him up to bring in the brightest and best coaches. There are already rumors that he's going to poach one of the top recruiters in the Midwest from Kentucky in Merrow, and that maybe he might even be able to poach the offensive coordinator that he had here at Colorado, but there might be some contractual stipulations with that. As there were with him, there's going to be a buyout with Colorado. I can tell you that the fans here are outraged. They are enraged. They are incensed, and they just can't believe that Tucker, and I think what really got him, what's going to sting and stick with him, and why Mike Griffith talks about a loss of credibility, was the fact that he put that tweet out there in the first place. If he just wouldn't have done that and said, hey, I'm flattered, I was interested, that's nice, but I'm staying here. I mean, that sets you up for a fall, and he's experiencing that right now. And I'll remind Michigan State fans, and Tom, you'll remember this too. Remember when Nick Saban left in the middle of the night for LSU? Remember how mad Spartan fans were, myself included? So you can't be a hypocrite in this and say, well, all's well that ends well, and Mel Tucker's coming here and tough shit in Colorado. You're going to have to deal with that. But to go back,
you're so right. And I'm a little, this wasn't yesterday, and I watched the entire thing on the Big Ten Network, the presser at 6:30, and they scheduled it at 6:30 as so it could be aired as a pregame show to Big Ten basketball. I think that was great, and the BTN does a terrific job at it. But was it a press conference or a coronation? And I was a little disappointed in some of the questions or lack thereof. Larry Lage asked the timeline question. What was the timeline of the whole process of, from Saturday to Monday and everything? Asked the timeline, but I would love to have been. I loved if the question was asked, what changed from pulling your candidacy on Saturday to accepting the position on Monday night, other than that they knew it was where this was a place I was supposed to be. All you got is, listen, we know the answer. It's money. So he came because that's what changed, right? Money. I mean, we all know that. Everybody would do that. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. But when you go out, is having your credibility blown up worth the money? Most people say, yeah, hell with credibility. I'll take the money. I mean, I was really surprised we didn't get what changed question from that MSU media, which Michigan media is always accused of, the blue wall being slow pitch softball media. Michigan State media yesterday played slow pitch softball at the Mel Tucker press conference.
What would you like to have had asked then, Tom, differently, more directly? I mean, I get the gist of what you said.
I said, what changed? Yeah. What changed? I mean, what was the scenario? How did they paint it? How did, basically, I don't know who was involved. Glenn Sugiyama was involved with this, or who were the players and Bill Beekman that changed from when you said you pulled your candidacy on Saturday? I mean, we know the answer, money, but say it. I thought he was very uncomfortable at the press conference, and not everybody is a public speaker. I get that. But this is an awkward hire. It's not a bad hire, but it reminds me so much, Ryan, of the Juwan Howard, not all of it, but there's a little bit of the Juwan Howard hire with Michigan basketball. I went into that press conference down there, and I left that press conference not excited at all, but not disappointed at all. It's like you don't know. You just don't know. 1 year, absolutely 1 year of head coaching experience, 5-7 at Colorado in a somewhat lousy conference. He lost to Arizona, USC, UCLA, and Air Force. Okay? And he had a quarterback and a receiver that will both end up playing in the NFL. So it's not like he was just, had no talent there. But we have a 1 year evaluation. Yet, Spartan Nation, everybody's excited, and I guess that's what fan bases do. You embrace it, but if you take off your love goggles, I think you really got to be kind of right down the middle. Not excited, not disappointed. Let's just see how it plays out.
Yeah, I exactly agree in that I can see totally both sides of this, but let's go to the positive side first and remember where Michigan State was when Luke Fickell turned them down. Now, Larry Lays, you mentioned, asked about the timeline. Well, the timeline accurately was that Mel Tucker was approached before Luke Fickell. Now, there might not have been an offer made, but there were overtures made. Fickell had a very serious discussion with Michigan State. Robert Saleh, the defensive coach for the San Francisco 49ers, reportedly now had been interviewed for the Michigan State position. There were other names that had been bandied about, but in the wake of Fickell, what were the top names? I mean, the top one I could garner was Chris Creighton at Eastern Michigan, a MAC coach who's done a great job, not to take anything away from him, but that would have been the top candidate. Maybe Jim McElwain at Central Michigan, who has, of course, head coaching experience at Colorado State, Florida, briefly with the University of Michigan. Head coach at Central Michigan, turned that program around and was the coach of the year in the Mid-American Conference. That would have been an intriguing hire. Harlan Barnett was another name. Mike Stoops from Kentucky and Brett Bielema. I mean, if those are the alternatives, then yeah, I could see going after Mel Tucker and try to catch a rising star, right? Like you're saying, he's only got the 1 year at Colorado of head coaching experience at the college level, but his pedigree speaks volumes. He played for Barry Alvarez as a defensive back at Wisconsin. He was a GA for Nick Saban. He was an assistant coach for Jim Tressel. He went back and worked with Nick Saban. He's got ties to Mark D'Antonio, therefore. So the legacy speaks for itself in carrying that forward, and he's noted as a very good recruiter, and in the Midwest where his roots are, he's a Cleveland, Ohio native. This makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. Now, the flip side of that is what Mike Griffith is reporting, and before the podcast, Tom, you were telling me another member of the media corroborates what Mike Griffith is saying, and that is the looming, impending, kind of lurking, ominous sanctions that could be heading Michigan State's way for football with regard to the Curtis Blackwell lawsuit, that there might be a racial element to that. Could that have been a factor in maybe hiring Mel Tucker as the second African-American head coach in Michigan State history when most programs across the country can't even say that they've had one? And, of course, in the wake of the legacy of Duffy Daugherty, who was integral in integrating college football for African-Americans from the South. So Michigan State can be proud, I think, in that respect. But again, with these unresolved issues, everything pertaining to Mark D'Antonio, the timing of his retirement, we'll call it, he stepped away, and the reports that are coming out in the wake of this, I have not substantiated myself, but I've seen it from multiple sources that Mark D'Antonio was pressured and approached to make changes to his assistant coaching staff, changes which he was very resistant to, and rather than make those changes, he opted for retirement. Another kind of layer to this reporting was that Bill Beekman had formed and orchestrated a search firm to replace Mark D'Antonio without D'Antonio's knowledge, and that irked D'Antonio to the point where he made the announcement when he did, rather than right after the season or right after the bowl win or maybe right after the new year, after the college football season ended. Why wait until February 4th when you hamstring your program, you leave it hanging? It was right in the wake of the report by Tony Paul in the Detroit News about Curtis Blackwell, these allegations that had been made. And is there an investigation coming, as Mike Griffith suggests? Whether there is or isn't, Mel Tucker had to come into this decision eyes wide open, knowing there were cultural problems at Michigan State, both university-wide with Larry Nassar, the board of trustees, the instability at president and athletic director, and with the football program itself with the off-the-field issues that Mark D'Antonio had with Corley King and Vance and Austin Robertson, now with Curtis Blackwell tied into all that. There's no way Mel Tucker was ignorant of that and didn't know. This is part of the deal. This is part of the package, part of the total picture at Michigan State, and he had to know what he was getting into. And money talks, and that's interesting, and Michigan State backs up the Brinks truck and makes him an offer he can't refuse. So I get why Mel Tucker takes it, but the undertaking for him, Tom, this could be a lot more than he bargained for, and Griffith makes an interesting point in the terms of the resources in the Big Ten East alone. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, endowments, scholarships, funding, alumni base, donors, season tickets, all these things that come into revenue for a program that Michigan State from the starting line is at a disadvantage with, and you've got to recruit against that. Mark D'Antonio was able to successfully navigate those waters for many years, and he deserves immense credit for that. But, Tom, it's not a job for the faint-hearted, and it's not something that just any coach can do and do successfully.
No, absolutely not. No, I did hear rumblings that, and I haven't really seen this contractual commitment of what Michigan State's going to do from a resource standpoint. It was indicated, what I'm reading, that Michigan State was going to ramp up not only assistance pay and all that stuff. Obviously, they're going to pay him a lot of money that more people thought that would ever be spent on a football coach. And to be honest with you, on this whole hiring thing, I think Michigan State fans are giddy over the fact that Michigan State finally did back up the Brinks truck to pay for a coach, no matter who it was. It's like, oh, wow, hey, we're paying good money, man. They've been thirsty for that. They've been thirsty for financial commitment to paying coaches and assistant coaches to keep them on a level playing field. But no, you're right about, or Mike is right about the resources. The resources that Ohio State has is mind-boggling. Michigan, hey, there's upgrades literally every minute of every day down there at the athletic complex. You drive down State Street on all those sports, which is why Michigan is the best all-sports school in the Big Ten. It's commitment, and that's what Michigan State wants for the football program is commitment. And it's been cited that it'll happen, but Mike makes really valid points. They will probably trail those other three schools, including Penn State. We know all about what that school's about with the football commitment for many years to come.
Final thought then, Tom, on where the program goes here, MSU, as you watch it from your perspective, and Mel Tucker comes in year one. We know that the cupboard is very bare when it comes to talent for Michigan State this fall. Not even sure who the quarterback's going to be. I guess Rocky Lombardi, by default, would be the leading candidate coming in. You got Theo Day, but you're losing a lot from the receiving core through attrition defensively up front, maybe most notably guys like Kenny Willekes and Joe Bacci, of course, departed before the end of the season with his PED violation. Just how rough is it going to be, in your opinion, for 2020 and Mel Tucker in year one?
Well, it's going to be extremely rough. Even if nothing, even if what Mike Griffith cited is going to come down where there's, where worst case scenario he goes away and all that stuff. So no, I don't think I want to take this job. That would really be eye opening. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think it's going to struggle. I see Michigan State somewhere in the 4-win to 6-win category. The schedule is brutal. It's cited from too early to evaluate schedules for 2020 as the number one most difficult class in the entire schedule in the entire country. Michigan, I think, is 11th. Michigan State is number one toughest schedule. They got to go to BYU. But that all being said, when they go to Spartan Stadium for that Northwestern game, the first 3 and out, the first turnover, the first pick six, they're like, oh, God, I knew we wouldn't. I shouldn't have hired that guy. I mean, that's just human nature. Michigan State fans got to give this guy a shot. But I think it's going to be kind of like that Denny Stoltz here in 1973 when he first took over for Duffy. It's just going to be one of those things that's going to struggle a little bit and, have some glimpses here and there, but recruiting's everything. This guy supposedly is a good recruiter, and he's been to a lot of glamorous places, but how he handles that, that head coaching position at a university where you're out there in Denver, there's more attention, there's more emphasis, and then there's more need of success at Michigan State football than there is at CU football. How he handles that is that's your true litmus test.
Yeah, the expectations definitely higher in East Lansing than in Boulder, and left out the fact that he was the defensive coordinator for Georgia and Kirby Smart, another Nick Saban disciple. So again, the pedigree is there. I like Mel Tucker personally from what I've seen during his time here at Colorado, and I believe he was in the process of turning it around, and I think he'll do the same at Michigan State, but to what degree remains to be seen. You got to give him 2 or 3 years to get this fully turned around in the right direction, and I think the bar for him to clear, if he could somehow get to 6 wins and get to a bowl game, I'm being very serious here, in 2020 with that difficult schedule that Tom points out, I think that would be a success, a 6-6 campaign that gets to a bowl game. But you look at that schedule, and 6 wins are going to be hard to come by. With Bluebelly Tom Crawford, I'm Ryan Schuling. This is the Great Lakes Divide podcast. It's brought to you each and every week by the Record Lounge in Rio Town. Heather Frary, our good friend, bringing you the good music coming in, going out, and you can find much more in her store on South Washington, south from I-496, downtown Lansing, on the east side of the street. Plenty of free parking. Take a journey back through time. Take a look forward with new music every Friday. Go through their very hallways almost of music selection. If they don't have it, they'll find it for you. Special order it. Turn it around within 24 to 48 hours. And they have the hi-fi stereo equipment to play your records as well. That's the Record Lounge in Rio Town. Real quickly on basketball, this was going to be our primary focus before the Mel Tucker hire was made, but Michigan State with an enormous win. They hold off Illinois in Champaign to sweep the season series from a very tough Illini team. They led this game by as many as 20 with Cassius Winston in foul trouble. Other guys had to step up, but it almost got away from them late as it got real sketchy real fast. They hold on 70-69, the final score. Spartans win it. They stop a 3-game losing streak in the process. Xavier Tillman with a putback dunk. A lot of people thought it might have been an intentional pass off the backboard by Cassius Winston. He claimed that it was not. Tillman, nevertheless, there to finish, and he finishes with a double-double. 17 points, 11 rebounds. A solid game from Aaron Henry. That was good to see. 13 points for his effort. But Rocket Watts was the one that stood out in this one, playing confidently, aggressively, looking like he was having fun out there, just looking like he was unfazed like he was in his high school days. And it was a career night for him to this point. 9 for 14 from the floor. 21 points to lead all scorers on a down night for Cassius Winston, who only had 12 points in 25 minutes. Kind of a nothing burger for Gabe Brown again. Maybe still the lingering effects of the flu. 23 minutes, he only scored 2 points. And we got to talk about Foster Loyer. This poor kid, I mean, he was an absolute disaster in this game on both ends of the floor. When he comes in, the floodgates open, and it's not in a good way. It's against the Spartans. He had no points in 11 minutes, had 1 assist and 2 turnovers. The Spartans without Cassius Winston on the floor might be a one-and-done team in the tournament. God forbid he got in foul trouble during the big dance, or even more so with any kind of injury whatsoever. Good news to report for those of you that follow Big Ten basketball, know that Ayo Dosunmu, who had a great game against Michigan and had 17 points in this one and had the final shot to try to win this game for Illinois, and awkwardly kind of slid on the floor and fell down. Great defense by Aaron Henry. It looked like it could have been a major knee injury. It was not. The MRI came back clean. Dosunmu should be back in relatively short short order, and we're happy for Brett Underwood in Illinois. It's been a tremendous season for them that he'll be back. He had 17 points and 9 rebounds. Kofi Coburn, kind of a pedestrian night for him in all. Michigan State did a fairly good job defensively against him. He had 11 points, 8 rebounds, and off the bench, Andres Feliz had 15 points for Illinois. Again, Michigan State able to hold on despite a brutal second half. They had a very strong start to this game, unlike most games they've played on the road, and they win it 70-69. Tom Crawford, your thoughts on this win for Michigan State, and improves them to 9-5 in conference play, currently in third place, 2 games back in the loss column behind Maryland. They've got 2 games head-to-head with Maryland coming up. They still have 1 against Penn State, so they very much still control their own destiny. But just how big was this win for MSU?
Oh, it was huge. It was a fork in the road win. I mean, I don't care if they blew the 20-point lead. You win in Champaign against a team that was, fighting mad, the Fighting Flying Illini, coming off with they had a 2-game skid. Now it's 3, and it's a good team. Michigan State really needed this win. I'm not saying that Michigan State is going to be the Big Ten champion, regular season champion, but it keeps them in the hunt. I don't think they've ever been really in jeopardy of being a bubble team unless things would just totally tailspin out of control. But a good win coming off the loss to Michigan. I thought optically when you watched Michigan State, they were so much faster than they and Xavier Tillman in particular was just the laser focus in this game. So I was impressed with that win. And now it sets up for Saturday as far as College Game Day coming to the Brez, and a big opportunity with Maryland to get truly back in the race. And it'll be another Mel Tucker coronation opportunity for the football and basketball, that whole bond that Izzo likes between football and basketball. So everything's lining up perfect in that, and that's an opportunity. It'll be tough because Maryland got a little scare at home in Nebraska in that sandwich game between 2 big wins, and so I think Maryland's going to be a tough out on Saturday when they play Michigan State.
So after that narrow 70-69, keep it out of the fire win for Michigan State over number 22 Illinois, Spartans come back home. And if they want to win the Big Ten Conference regular season title, it pretty much comes down to beating Maryland twice. And they've got to do it the first time at Breslin. Saturday evening, 6 p.m., ESPN as the number 9 ranked Terrapins come to town. A win there, Spartans are very much in the Big Ten race. They'd be 1 back in the loss column, but if they lose, 3 back in the loss column with just 5 games to play. And for academic purposes, that ship will have sailed on a chance at a conference title. Turning now to the Michigan Wolverines, and it started in the sludge, in the muck, with a very bad Northwestern team. The Wildcats came out, made some free throws, extended out to a 13-6 lead. Michigan couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, and then all of a sudden, Eli Brooks had been making threes, and then others jumped in on the act. Eli himself hitting yet another one, and then Franz Wagner. Again, Michigan catapults from a 13-6 deficit. And I want to pinpoint one particular substitution because it was called for on Twitter by Tom Crawford. Austin Davis coming in for the struggling John Teske. And it continues, Tom. I know John Teske is a guy that drives Michigan fans nuts because he's capable at any moment of being one of the premier bigs in the conference. And then games like against Northwestern, a 79-54 laugher as it turned out for Michigan in a 25-point win. He just really struggled. 3 of 14, 6 points, 8 rebounds, missed a lot of shots point blank in the paint. What is it with Teske that isn't clicking right now from your standpoint? And how much more playing time would you like to see Austin Davis get?
Well, right now, as far as the play minutes, it's like Teske typically, 25 minutes, Austin Davis 14 or 15, maybe throw Colin Castleton in there. Austin Davis only had 12 minutes of action yesterday and had 9 points. Yeah, this is something that we saw actually at the Battle for Atlantis. We saw his emergence, and he worked extremely hard. I'm talking about Austin this summer. I don't know with Teske. I mean, he has just lost his confidence. Those early games, a couple of those early games when he gave up big numbers to the opposing team's postman, he has lost his confidence. It has rolled from defense to offense, and countless times he cannot finish. He was 3 of 14 from the field. It was just a bad start. He had 5 misses in a row. I mean, Michigan was missed their first 11 shots in this game. Teskey missed 5 of those, and yet they're only down 4-0. That was the key to the game. You're 0 for 11, and you're only down 4, and it was a matter of time. You mentioned that was a pretty good note there about that. The 3 ball that. Well, Eli Brooks nailed, and all of a sudden Michigan was off to the races. Northwestern has played teams tough. They led Maryland for a long time in Evanston. Purdue had their turnaround game against Northwestern with a comeback, and they almost beat Rutgers. They lost in overtime at Rutgers at the RAC. Mm-hmm. Good Lord, which is one of the tougher places to win. Nobody's won this year. So a better quality win than might look on paper. Yeah, Northwestern is only, is 1-12 in Big Ten play, 6-17 overall, but they've lost countless games, 6 or 7 games by 5 or less. And they won. They were favored by 5.5, and they won by 25. So a good, solid win. Yeah, but Teskey is a news peg. Yeah, and Austin Davis, Isaiah Livers is the true news peg. I'm telling you what, having him back, Ryan, is unbelievable how valuable he is. He had 17 points, 7-7 from the free throw line, 5-11 from the field, and he's just the ultimate glue guy. And as long as he stays healthy, Michigan has a chance of beating any of these teams ahead of them.
Isaiah Livers, perfect from the free throw line, as Tom said. He was 0 of 5 from 3, but that was really the only hole in his game in this game against Northwestern with 17 points and 5 rebounds. He was 5 of 6 from 2, including 2 thunderous dunks, and one in particular, Tom, it just took my breath away. I yelled at my television. I'm not even a Michigan fan, just from the sheer evisceration that it was at the rim, and I think most Michigan fans were just like, don't hurt your groin.
I know, but I'm telling you what, that's, and we talked about this in the post-game presser. I mean, he can't play 75%, and I think most athletes at this level are wired that way. I mean, if they can't play all out, they're not going to play. And, that he had those 2 poke jams that were unbelievable. Isaiah Livers is a very deceivingly, he is way stronger than you could imagine. When you look at him up close, he's got this sinewy type of muscles. He weighs 240 pounds. And he's just extraordinarily strong, very athletic. He defends well. He rebounds well. He's got a jaw for the ball. And, he's perfect on the free throw line, which is a good thing for Michigan.
Michigan out-rebounded Northwestern. No real surprise here, 45-32. But a big part of this, Xavier Simpson was in a little bit of foul trouble. He only had 4 points in this game, did dish out 5 assists. But again, I'm going to make this comparison analogy. And going forward, let's say a couple years into this rivalry, who is it going to be? It's going to be Rocket Watts and Michigan State against David DeJulius and Michigan. I love DeJulius, so many things about him. And in this game, he was a column stuffer. 7 points, 7 assists, 6 rebounds, comes in ably, kind of picks up the slack for Xavier Simpson, all important as that backup point guard presence. Tom, speak to the performance that DeJulius had and where you see it going from here for him.
I'll tell you what, when Xavier sat down, and this is no diss on Xavier Simpson because he's obviously another terrific leader on that team and a really good player. But he sat down, they went on the run. And that's David DeJulius, who's every game he seems to be a little bit more competent. He had 7 dimes in this game along with 7 points. He's the starting guard next year. He's really, really good. And you saw in the Michigan State game, he kind of slapped the floor. I think he was kind of mocking Michigan State when he did that.
Oh yeah.
He's very is an outgoing guy. He's very well spoken, very emotional, and I just think he's got a terrific future at Michigan.
So for the Wolverines, a win they had to have. It's more important that they didn't lose this game against Northwestern. They improved to 6-7 in conference now, 15-9 overall. They come back home. They take on Indiana. Then they've got 2 tough trips on the road to the RAC and Rutgers in Piscataway, New Jersey, and to West Lafayette and Mackey Arena at Purdue, 2 very difficult venues to play in. And so that makes this Sunday's game, 1 p.m. start, CBS, Tom. You'll be there in Ann Arbor as the Hoosiers come to town. All the more critical for Michigan to put in the win column.
Yeah, you got to protect home. So if they get to 7-7, Ryan, then they got that's 14 games done and 6 to go. All they need to do is get to 10. So they got to split 3 and 3, and they can go to Indy all comfy and cozy, knowing that they're going to be in the tournament. And that's realistically their goal right now. I mean, they have no shot at the Big Ten title. So polish the stone, if you will, and make sure you're in the tournament and get better and see what kind of run they can make, both in the Big Ten tournament, where they actually have a lower seed the Big Ten tournament than they probably will in the NCAA tournament. That's how tough the Big Ten is right now. If they were in the Big Ten tournament right now, they would be an 11 seed. If they're in the NCAA tournament right now, they'd be an 8 or 9.
So once again, this upcoming weekend's action, Michigan State, big one for them, at home at Breslin, 6 o'clock Eastern start on ESPN against number 9 ranked Maryland. And then on Sunday, 1 p.m. on CBS, Michigan at home against Indiana. And our own Tom Crawford will be there. Before we sign things off here, Tom, I want to go back to my Twitter poll, which nearly garnered 1,000 votes. And
Whoa,
yeah,
good job.
I know. And the question goes as follows. What grade do you give Michigan State football's hire of Coach Mel Tucker as Mark D'Antonio's successor? 43.8% said a B grade, 26.9% said an A, 19.3% said a C, and 10%, I'm assuming these are all Michigan fans, gave it a D or lower. So the aggregate grade, I would say, is a B+. Tom Crawford, you have your opinions of the hire and how it all went down, but for where Michigan State was after being rebuffed by Luke Fickell to land Mel Tucker as opposed to any other candidate that might have been left available out there, what grade do you give Michigan State for this hire?
Well, it's a solid B, and the reason I'm not going to give it an A, and I don't know how anybody can give someone an A when they have 1 year of head coaching experience. It's just similar to what I talked about with Juwan Howard, where we don't know. So, it's not one of those things, you're just electrically excited about it, and you're certainly not disappointed about it. It's a solid pick, particularly because of the circumstances. But, the fact of he doesn't have a lot of head coaching experience, and the fact that, there's some challenges he's going to be undergoing, going into the Big Ten right now. When you're, from a program standpoint of resources, that's the 4th best team in the East, resource-wise. Okay, that's challenging. So, but it's a solid B, and I think he's a good get for Michigan State.
And we'll have much more on the Mel Tucker era as it begins for Michigan State. Next stop, the spring game, and we'll see what all transpires for that. And we'll have all the information we can get to you. Again, looking to have Mike Griffith on the program this upcoming Sunday edition of the Great Lakes Divide podcast. Tom and I will be recording that Sunday night after his appearance on Press Pass All-Stars, which you can watch in Lansing on Fox 47. And we'll recap both Michigan State's home game against Maryland and Michigan's home game against Indiana on the hard court as well. That'll do it for us from here for now. For Bluebelly Tom Crawford, I'm Ryan Schuling. Heather Ferrari and the Record Lounge sending you out to the sounds that they have available in their store. Colorado, Rocky Mountain High, John Denver, you've heard on this podcast. Hope you enjoy that. In addition, some new music available each and every Friday, including what you're hearing as we go to the close of this podcast. Remind your friends they can like us on Facebook. They can follow on Twitter. Both those places at GL Divide. And don't forget to subscribe, download, listen to the podcast on any available podcast platform that you prefer, and tell your friends about that as well. Until Sunday, have a great weekend, everybody.
You say you like the wind blowing through your hair. Well, come on, roll with me till the sun goes down. Texas sun. Say you wanna hit the highway for the engine roars. Well, come on, roll with me till the sun goes down. The Texas sun.